Hello, I'm Dave Mowitz, and welcome to Successful Farming. On today's program, I'm going to track the prices being given for John Deere batwing mowers. The engine man, Ray Bohax, explains how engine timing change wear and how to correct for that problem. And after these brief messages, we tap into the considerable knowledge of Dennis Bollig to help you tune up your corn head to minimize losses. You know that corn head is the #1 cause of grain losses in harvesting today? So please stay tuned. Welcome to Top Shops. Today, we're at the shop of Denny Bollig, Fenton, Iowa farmer and president of Dragotech USA, and we're talking corn heads. And the reason why we're looking at corn heads is I suspect farmers are experiencing more head losses due to maybe poor maintenance or misadjustment than they necessarily realize. Denny, is that your observation as well?
Absolutely. Harvesting corn now, the genetics that we harvest today is different than what we did, 20, 30 years ago. Yield loss from a head, yeah. It's there. It's real. No matter how well of a job you do of adjusting and maintaining your equipment, a combine, a corn head, you're going to have some yield loss. It's impossible to eliminate all yield loss. So the goal of the farmer really should be to reduce those losses.
So Denny, I've seen some university research indicating that because of the new hybrids and because of the higher yields, losses at the head can be 10 to 15% on average on some farm operations. Would you disagree with that?
When you say 10 to 15%, 10 to 15% of all the loss in the field, actually, Dave, it's almost closer to 40%.
Oh my gosh.
No, that's 60, excuse me, it's actually 60%. 60% of the yield loss in a field comes from the corn head. The corn head to me is right behind the importance of that in the lineup of equipment for a farmer is right behind the corn planter, because it's the next thing that actually physically touches that corn plant. You look at all the work that's done to get that corn planter to plant that corn and precision and everything else, and the next thing that's actually going to touch that corn plant is the corn head. Yeah. It's not to devalue the value of a good combine, okay, but it's like with a corn planter. What's more important in the modern day planting of corn, the tractor or the corn planter?
The planter.
The planter.
Yes.
And again, the combines, yeah, we can't do anything without the combine, but they've become more and more foolproof. Yeah. The challenge is in the corn head. Now with modern genetics, we're harvesting corn at very low moisture levels, down to 20, 18, all the way down to 13 and 10% corn we've seen in some areas. That sets up a situation where that ear becomes very fragile. And you got to remember, with that corn head, our goal is to get that ear all the way into the combine intact. We don't want separation till you get into the combine. And so harvesting now with what you talked about was these are big combines and big corn heads, but there's still the need for speed that a lot of farmers are looking at. I want to drive faster.
Denny, at what speed does an ear come into the deck plate? I mean, we're talking miles per hour here.
We're talking miles per hour. If we're talking, where most people run a conventional head, you're pulling that plant down at 15 to 18 miles an hour.
Wow. Graham Quick, the Iowa State engineer, he was kind of a world authority on combines. He always said the best friend of anybody running a combine was the owner's manual. Would you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with that. You've got to, the machines, we don't use them every day. It's not like our computer we turn on, or iPad we flip open, and we just and it's every day. These combines and corn heads are used only really weeks out of the year. And we have to refamiliarize ourselves with the procedure to adjust them, to maintain them, and maintenance them.
And this brings up the point about deck plates is, I've actually had to go on my dad's corn head and try to adjust those. And they hadn't ever been adjusted, and they were just rusted.
Yeah.
And we had to take a torch in some of them to try to get them to free up.
Yeah.
That's the old-fashioned deck plates.
Yeah.
But I understand even the hydraulic adjustable, they can actually rust where they're not moving.
The deck plate itself right now, it should always be running right beside the stock, because you realize that is the channel, that deck plate gap is the channel to lose any shell corn that is in that, that comes off of the butt of the ear. So the idea of having that gap as tight as possible without plugging the row unit,
right,
without breaking stocks off. So there's a balance there. You need to have that set for that.
We've gone through, got the deck plates taken care of. It's logical then to go to the gathering chains, right, as they work with the deck plates.
The potential always in farming is to have down corn, and that gathering chain, it's the one of the most important things to be able to reach out and pull and lift up this corn. So it isn't just there to move the ear after it's been harvested up to the auger.
It's presenting the stalk to the deck plate, isn't it?
It's actually presenting the stock to the deck plate.
Oh, I hadn't thought of that.
And so it's critical that they be adjusted and properly maintained.
We've gone through the chain, got it up, talking about that crucial mechanism, because it's kind of like a three-legged stool. We got a stock roller down there too. Is that kind of often forgot? Because those things can wear, especially in spots, can't they?
Absolutely. The stock roller, again, when, the purpose of the stock roller, the original design of a corn head and the stock roller was simply to pull the plant down. And now we're seeing, multiple things try and be done with the stock roller. Not only pull the plant down, but try to chew up the corn stalks and all that.
Chop it up the corn stalks, and all the things that go with it.
It's not what the original design or the primary purpose of that stock roller is to pull that plant down and not break it off and all those things. But with a stock roller, you gotta realize that's where all the really hard work of a corn head starts, that puts a lot of wear and tear all the way through the drive mechanisms, all the way back to the combine.
Do you assume also that you're good for the season when it comes to maintenance, or should you stop mid-season or somewhere along the season and just do an inspection again of wear?
Well, Ken, of course, David, depends on the size of the operations. Sure. But you look at these farm operations, the amount of acres that are going through this, absolutely, you need to be double checking, triple checking sometimes through the season to make sure your chain tension, looking at your deck plates, because I mean in one field you can have some obstructions there that maybe spread your deck plates open on a conventional deck plate or a hydraulic deck plate, and it'd be a shame to think that that happened in the first 100 acres, and then you harvested 1,000 acres after that, and that one row was losing some more grain than the other rows.
Denny, is there a website you can go to get more information on both maintenance and adjusting corn heads?
Absolutely. You can go to our website, dragotech.com, and to pick up some pointers on making you have a better harvest.
Hello, Ray Bohax here, Successful Farming Engine Man, and I want to welcome you to my segment. What we're going to discuss is timing chains. Now, a timing chain is something that is used to connect the crankshaft to the camshaft, and I'm sure that all of you know that. And the crankshaft actually turns twice as fast as the camshaft, and that's why the crank gear is small and the cam gear is much larger. But what will happen is that when the timing chain wears, so let's think of a manure spreader or anything, a combine with a chain will wear and stretch. As the chain stretches, you're going to change the phase, the relationship of the camshaft and distributor to the crankshaft, just as you would on any piece of equipment with a chain. Now, the relationship is very important because it's going to determine when the valves open and close, camshaft, and when the ignition is going to fire. So there is a very simple way for you to check for excessive timing chain wear on any gasoline engine without taking it apart. And the steps are quite simple. What you're going to do is remove all of the spark plugs because you need to turn the engine back by hand. So you will remove all of the spark plugs and you will find a wrench that either could go on the harmonic balancer or you would need two people and turn the flywheel with a flywheel tool. Application specific to that piece of equipment. You're going to turn the crankshaft against rotation, so in other words backwards, 2 complete turns. And the reason for that is that you want to actually take all the slack out of the chain. So you're going to turn the crankshaft backwards 2 turns and you're going to stop with the timing mark on top dead center. Then you're going to need a helper and you're very gently going to tap with the wrench and turn the crankshaft in the direction of rotation. And as soon as this distributor rotor moves, you have taken up all of the slack and you're going to stop. And at that particular point, you're going to read the timing tab, and if it's at 4 degrees, that means that that chain has 4 degrees of wear in it. So to recap, very simple, remove all spark plugs, turn the engine by hand backwards 2 complete rotations with the timing mark, stopping at top dead center. Then with the aid of a helper, gently tap the crank with the wrench in the direction of rotation. As soon as the distributor moves, you've taken up all the slack, read the timing tab, that's how much wear. If it has more than 3 or 4 degrees wear, the timing chain needs to be replaced. You took nothing apart and you checked on every motor. See you next time in the farm shop.
Join me at a sale to see what a 15-foot John Deere batwing mower sells for after these brief messages. Man, as wet as it's been, I could really use a good mower. And a batwing mower is worth its weight in gold for maintaining a farmstead, knocking down weeds on CRP land, as well as in a pasture, and for all-around mowing duties. That's why, at this sale, I'm covering this Deere HX15 batwing mower, which is up for sale at an auction being conducted by Sullivan Auctioneers. Now, what we have here is a 2015 model, complete with front and rear chains, laminated tires, and best yet, brand new blades. Now, several years ago, a late model batwing like this would have brought a premium price, but I checked the internet and it is loaded with similar mowers. Actually, it's loaded with listings of brand new 2018 mowers that haven't sold yet on dealers' lots. That's got to be putting price pressure down on machines like the 2015 batwing. Talking with Dan Sullivan of Sullivan Auctioneers, and we're looking at that. It's a 2015 Deere batwing mower. It's an HX15. The one thing I noticed about it, maybe 2015 comes with new blades. Going to be mowing here pretty soon. What do you think I ought to be looking at if I'm wanting to buy a mower like that?
Well, Dave, first of all, thank you for coming, covering the sale. You guys do a great job, and we enjoy your show.
Thank you.
Coming into the season, to reiterate what you touched on, Dave, you know, we've come off a pretty doggone tough old winter, and now that the sun has a little power to it, days are getting longer, the old blades of grass are turning green, so I think there's going to be some activity on that mower. Has 8 laminated tires, and to touch on what you said, brand new blades, and there's a lot of interest in it. I'm going to tell you, we sold one today out in Indiana, a couple years older, but pretty nice, brings 11,500.
Really?
I think that batwing could bring 12,500, maybe 13,000.
Yeah, I noticed there was a lot of new used 2018 sitting on dealers' lots. Does that ever have an influence on a used mower like that?
I think it does. It's all about inventory and supply and demand, Dave, but there's a lot of used mowers out there, and like you said, but you know, this is sitting right here, low time on it, brand new blades, excellent condition, and I think with the crowd that we're having here today, that I think there'll be a lot of activity on it, and I'll be disappointed if it rings under 11 or 11.5. That batwing mower, I think you'll see a lot of hands in the air, and it's in everybody's price range that can afford something like that, Dave.
Well, thanks for that information, Dan. Let's go watch that batwing mower sell.
Low time on it, 15 model, 11.5, 11.5, Simple Beer Racer and 11.5, 11 dollar to 15 down 5, 11 11 don't wait on these batwings, they're higher than we're doing down today. Now 750, 11 5, 7 11 down 7 11 Simple Beer Racer and 11 down 750, 11 11,000, sitting now 12,000. Late model, boy, 12,000. 12,000, final call, 12,215. Sold at 12,000.
Our HX15 batwing mower sold for $12,000, and Dan Sullivan figured that's what it would sell for. And you know, he should know this is his business. That's why I always recommend you talk to the auctioneer conducting a sale to track price trends before bidding. Now, we did some research on that, and we found batwing mowers of 2015 model year going from about $10,000 up to $14,000, with their average asking price of about $12,500. And we now offer you the opportunity to get appraisals from the authority on equipment prices, and that is Iron Solutions. Used by banks, manufacturers, and dealers from across North America, Iron Solutions gathers actual dealer sales, auction purchases, and wholesale transactions on equipment built in the past 20 years. Now, to get your 2 free appraisals each month, go to agriculture.com/whatsitworth. Now, for more information about Sullivan Auction, go to their website at sullivanauctioneers.com. I'll see you again next week on another Steel Deals Report. After these brief messages, we feature a classic Ford tractor that represents a rich history for the man who restored it. So please stay tuned. Our Aegis Iron featured tractor this week is a Ford 871 owned by Tom Ogle of Grinnell, Iowa. And Tom, I have to ask you about this because it's always been confusing to me. You see 801 on the side. I knew there was the 801 series, but this is an 871.
Right.
And there were 4 or 5 tractors in this series?
Yes, the 801 was the series of the tractor. And this tractor has been restored and repainted, and that was the decal that was available. We couldn't find an 871 decal, which was the decal on here before it was painted.
Oh, okay.
But the middle digit on the Ford nomenclature indicated the transmission that the tractor had. And this one, and as an 871, had the 540 independent PTO with the Selecto-Speed transmission. If it were an 881, it would have had 540 and 1,000 and ground drive PTO with the Selecto-Speed transmission.
Now, this tractor is kind of near and dear to your heart. This was your dad's tractor, right?
Yes. My dad bought this tractor on a farm auction in 1960. Might have been 61, but I was 12 years old at the time. And he bought this tractor. It had 375 hours on it. He gave $2,975 for it when it was 2 years old. And he bought the tractor, a 3-bottom plow, and a 10-foot mounted disc. And we always called this the Big Ford because we had a 641 that we pulled a 2-bottom plow with and a 7-foot mounted disc, and that was the Little Ford.
And this is a tractor you spent a little time restoring it too.
Yes.
Over the years.
My dad passed away about 20 years ago, and the tractor was sitting in the machine shed. It hadn't been run for 3 years. And we started getting ready for a farm sale, and I found out that the motor was stuck. And I wanted to restore the tractor in the worst way. And but I thought, man, we put it on an auction and it's going to go for a price either for salvage or whatever. And so my mother went to my siblings. I have 2 brothers and a sister, and she said, I'd like to give the tractor to Tom. He'd like to restore it. So Mom said, I'd like you to have the tractor if you want it. And I said, sure. And so I brought it home and I pulled out the spark plugs and we poured stuff in the engine and I couldn't get it, broke loose.
Oh my.
So I took it to Albee, Iowa to a Ford dealer down there. He'd been a Ford dealer once upon a time. And a gentleman by the name of Ed West is a service manager down there. And I said, when it looks like a new one, call me. Well, when they started tearing the engine down, they had to push the pistons out of the block. It was stuck that tight, and they broke 2 of the pistons getting it apart. We put $2,400 in the engine and got the engine running. And they said, well, there's this and this wrong with the transmission. I said, well, fix it. We put another $1,600 in the Selecto-Speed transmission. And I knew it was weak because Dad had babied it along for a number of years. But we had $4 grand in this tractor before we started painting, before we started putting new tires on it, before we did a lot of that. It didn't make any difference.
You're on the lookout for a TW?
I would buy a TW15 if the right one came along, if it was in real nice shape. I had a 15 once upon a time.
Well, Tom, we'll see if we can help you out. So if you folks know of a good TW15 in good shape, get a hold of Tom Ogle of Grinnell, Iowa. I'll see you again next week on another Aegis Iron Feature Tractor of the Week. Please join us next week for an entire episode devoted to classic tractors. We're going on a tractor ride in the gorgeous Luss Hills of western Iowa, and then get a great restoration tip from the engine man. We track the sale of one of the hottest tractors on the market today, an Oliver 1755. And we tour the fantastic collection of Minneapolis Moline, Oliver, and White tractors amassed by the Pryzel family of Wisconsin. See you next week right here on Successful Farming. Hi, I'm Dave Mowitz. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, hit subscribe right here if you haven't already, and click that little bell right here to be notified when we post a new video. And click here to see more great episodes from Successful Farming Television.